Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so today we're tackling a super practical scenario, moving a file straight from Dynamics 365, Business Central, over to an SFTP server. And honestly, the best part here, we're going to do the whole thing without writing a mountain of code. If you've ever pulled your hair out over complex file transfer scripts, well, you're definitely in the right place. We're going to build this out visually, step by step. Let's get right into it. Here's our quick roadmap for today. 1. The low-code solution. 2. Triggering the workflow. 3. Fetching the blob content. 4. The SFTP SSH connector. And finally, 5. Testing your logic app. Let's roll.
Section 1. The low-code solution.
So traditionally, you might tackle a transfer like this by spinning up some Azure functions, right? Now, Azure functions are basically code triggered by an event. Powerful? Absolutely. But they really demand solid programming chops. On the flip side, we have Azure Logic Apps. This is a workflow triggered by an event, but it requires significantly less programming. It's essentially this empowering, visual, low-code savior for tasks exactly like the one we're looking at today. Let's quickly define this so we're all on the exact same page. Azure Logic Apps give you a way to execute custom workflows in the cloud using a graphical front end. No extensive programming skills required. Basically, if you're familiar with Power Automate, just think of Logic Apps as its bigger, more scalable brother that lives directly on Azure instead of Office 365. It's super robust and perfectly suited for our scenario.
All right, section 2, triggering the workflow. Getting this set up in the Azure portal is actually really straightforward. Step 1, you just head over and log into your Azure portal. Step 2, you're going to create a new logic app. Let's go ahead and name it SFTP Blob Transfer for this walkthrough. And step 3, once that designer interface opens up, you just hit blank logic app. Boom, you've got your blank canvas ready to be configured. Okay, so the whole process kicks off with a specific trigger. In the designer, you'll want to search for and select when a blob is added or modified, properties only. This right here is the initial spark. Assuming a file from Dynamics 365 Business Central has already landed in Azure Blob Storage, this exact event is what fires off our transfer workflow immediately.
Now, a really absolutely crucial point here. You have to explicitly tell your Logic app where to look. You can't just vaguely point to your entire storage account. You need to specify the exact container. So in our example, we select the container named D365BC files. Now our Logic app is actively listening to that specific folder, just waiting for a new file to drop.
Moving on to section 3, fetching the blob content. Okay, think about it like this. Our trigger just told us, hey, a file arrived, and it gave us all the metadata, but it didn't actually hand over the file data itself, right? So right after the trigger, you absolutely must add an action to get the blob content directly using the path from the previous step. It's a brief little middle step, but it's totally necessary to actually grab those physical bytes of data so we can move them. Which brings us to the main event, section 4, the SFTP SSH connector. So what is this thing? Well, the SFTP SSH connector is literally the bridge between your cloud storage and your destination. It securely takes that file content we just fetched from Azure Blob Storage and transfers it over to the SFTP server. It completely handles all that heavy lifting of the secure transfer, entirely behind the scenes. It's a real game changer. To set it up in your designer, you just click to add a new action. Search for SFTP SSH, and then from that list of available actions for the connector, you're going to select Create File. Now, before it actually lets you create the file, the connector is going to prompt you for your SFTP details. Think of it like unlocking the front door. You just need to punch in your server address, your username, and then your password or SSH key. Once you plug those credentials in, the Logic app locks in that initial secure connection to your destination server. And honestly, this next part perfectly highlights the magic of a low-code platform. Instead of writing custom code to pass variables around, the visual designer just pops up this menu of dynamic properties from your earlier steps. So for the Create File action, you simply click the file name field and easily map it right to the blob name from your trigger. Then map the file content field to the actual physical content we grabbed back in step 3. A couple of clicks, you hit save, and your mapping is totally done. How cool is that?
All right, setup is fully complete. Let's hit section 5, testing your Logic app.
Now for the ultimate question. How do we know it works? We obviously need to verify that this beautiful workflow we just built is going to hold up in the real world. Luckily, testing this is incredibly simple and honestly kind of satisfying. You literally just manually upload a test file or modify an existing one right inside your D365 BC Files Azure Blob storage container. Since our Logic app is actively keeping an eye on that specific container, doing this will instantly fire off the new workflow. Once it triggers, the workflow does its thing entirely automatically. But here is the really cool part. You can actually monitor its progress live, right there in the Azure Portal. You pull up the run history and just watch it blaze through the steps. Trigger, fetch content, connect to SFTP, create file. You get these incredibly satisfying little green check marks all the way down. It makes the whole process totally transparent and, super easy to troubleshoot if you accidentally typoed a password or something. So you now have a fully functional automated bridge from Azure straight to an SFTP server. And guess what? We didn't have to write a single line of C# to make it happen. So I want to leave you with this question. What other manual file transfers could you automate next with Azure Logic apps? Seriously, once you've got this basic trigger, fetch, create pattern down, the possibilities for automating your day-to-day tasks are virtually endless. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in this explainer. Now go build some amazing workflows.